My name's Joanne Myers, and I am, firstly, a retired York Region educator, teacher, and then I went on to work at the Elementary Teachers Federation, the provincial office in Toronto in the area of professional development, professional services, and also had the privilege of working with staff at the Ontario Teachers Federation, specifically involved in the TLLP program, which was a great honor, highlight of my career. And it's wonderful to be here this evening. I'm now retired, but happy to have been tapped on the shoulder to be part of the webinar series that we're going to be starting tonight with Michelle Cordy. I do want to mention that we are videoing the webinar chat for the OTF website, and it will be posted. So if you have joined us and you do not wish to be on that video on the OTF website, then please feel free to turn off your camera if you would like to. We will have a question period at the end after we've had our chat with Michelle. And I'm going to open it up to Michelle now to introduce herself and tell us about her current teaching position. And we'll go from there. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm Michelle Cordy, Ms. Cordy, and I am a grade 3 teacher in London, Ontario, and I'm with the Thames Valley District School Board. And I'm tuning in live from my house. So it's kind of cozy that we're here in our comfy couches, ready to kind of just have a laid back conversation.
Absolutely. And I love the neon sign that's right behind you. Michelle, did you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, like it's a pretty cheeky sign, right? To get like a sign made about something that you're passionate about. Yeah, I don't know if it's backwards or forwards for you, but hack the classroom.
Right,
yeah, it works. Okay, yeah, like I there was a point in my career where my hair was just on fire with passion and enthusiasm and excitement, and I still there's still definitely like a good heat that I've always enjoyed in my career of just loving my work and being motivated to do my best. But when my hair was like really on fire and I had really successive good luck, I was like a little kitten. I'd fall over and my nose would still land in the milk and the cream. I had this sign made because I got to this point in my career where I was trying very hard to find a lot of answers to questions, and I knew all the pieces were there. I just needed to figure out how to stitch them together in creative ways. And that's what hackers do. There's like this idea that hackers are like nefarious and, I got hacked, and there's certainly that side of it, but there's also like the original sense of the word hack comes from some college kids in MIT years ago, and it originally came out of this playful sense of problem solving, but of also making do, actually, like reusing code and trying to make something out of limited resources. And I'm like, hey, I know that feeling, and it really just stuck to me. So
oh my gosh, yeah, I love that.
So I got that up.
I didn't know the origin of hacking. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I love your analogy of your hair being on fire with your passion. And when I was teaching for 20 odd years before I went to ETFO, I always used to say, I wake up in the morning and I bounced out of bed to go to work. That was my passion. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, well, Michelle, to get started with our little fireside chat, everyone would love to hear about your career in teaching to date. And you just talked about fueling your passion. And we'd love to know specifically, with some stories and some examples, what has fueled your passion for professional learning and your growth over your 21 years?
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'll keep riffing on the hack the classroom thing, and then yeah, let's go with that. That feels good. Awesome. So I'm going to start in the middle and then I'm going to go back. But this, to me, there's a juicy story that's right in the middle, and then we can kind of, I'll flesh out the rest of it. So in 2010, iPads became a thing, and all of a sudden iPads came out and they made like laptops look really like old school. They made laptops, quite honestly, look like ghetto blasters, like something just, and then there was just this energy in this wave that I rode, and I was really interested educational technology. And then I was really interested in technology, and that's how I came to know about hacking. And in this hacker manifesto, there was this one line that was for programmers, but if you replace the words, it resonated so much with teaching. And it goes, too many programmers work on projects they neither need nor want. Every good piece of coding starts by scratching a personal itch. The image that I had, and then so replace the words, right? So take out programmer and put in students. Too many students work on projects they neither need nor want. Every good piece of learning starts by scratching a personal itch. And then put in teacher and say it again. Too many teachers work on projects they neither need nor want. Every good piece of learning and teaching, because God, those things are intertwined, aren't they? Starts by scratching a personal itch. And the image that came to me was like a dog in like a cone. And I felt like sometimes as a teacher, I felt like a dog in a cone where I had like an itch I wanted to scratch, but I just like couldn't get at it. And so fueled by, let's say it positively at first, fueled by many challenges and ongoing opportunities for learning, things that are frustrating, and constant uncertainty in the profession, and uncertainty about whether or not I was doing a good job. I was really motivated to try to like scratch a personal itch and to problem solve that frustration challenges, and to ease my own uncertainty, my own self-consciousness that I was doing a bad job, by like hacking stuff and figuring it out. So that little bit of phrase, that little turn of phrase was really important. And the solution in the hacker world was to turn to people, of course. And so in that moment, I was like, oh, don't worry about the problem. Worry about getting connected to people. Worry about working with students, with other teachers. And when I had that realization that this was I could take this feeling of my hair on fire, I could redirect this frustration and this uncertainty towards peers in a positive way and solve those problems. Like that was a great flow of energy. And like, to be honest, a good scoop of perfectionism scooped in there. And as Brene Brown says, if you're a perfectionist, you have fear riding shotgun and shame is riding in the back seat. And we can come back to later, if there's an opportunity, we can come back to how that perfectionism changed. So I also had definitely workaholic tendencies. And I think a lot of teachers have a hard time turning it off. So that's the middle thing that really motivated me. And then the real chunks of my career. I mean, I started actually teaching and almost quit in my first year because I was not successful when I began at all. But I went back really early in my career to do my Bachelor of Education, my Master's of Education, and ended up I did my MEd, and I had the most extraordinary experience at the University of Western where I was mentored, where I got to do research, I got to go to conferences. And again, there's that people theme again. I knew that people were there to solve my problem, even though you feel like you work in private practice. And then after a great MEd experience, this wonderful thing came along, which you alluded to, the world famous to us, TLLP. Do you want to say what the TLLP is? I know what it stands for, but do you want to say, do you want to explain what it is?
Teaching,
because you know it better than I know it as the teacher user, the little person, it big girl OTF thing. Do you want to
teacher leadership learning program?
Yeah. Do you want to say more about that, or should I just go back?
No, go right ahead. I think they want to hear the stories from you, the practical. I mean, I was involved behind the scenes with some of the organization. You were involved straight on, hands-on.
This program was the Cinderella program of education. So I had this amazing research experience in my MEd. I actually worked at Western and was like fully seconded for a year, and that was incredible. But then I went back to the classroom and I was like, oh my God, how do I keep, how do I like, oh, if only there was this thing where you could, do classroom-based research and have time to connect with other teachers and go to conferences. Like, does this thing exist? And my fairy godmother was OTF and the Teacher Learning and Leadership Program. And concurrently, there was another program out there called KNAR, KNAER, Knowledge Network. It was about knowledge mobilization. And so I applied to both of these things over a series of years. And they were both Cinderella moments. So I applied to these projects, got this funding, and this funding allowed me to purchase iPads, to get a release time. Imagine teachers having release time to work on, wait for it, to work on projects they need and want, and to scratch a personal itch.
So just let me get you to back up a little bit, Michelle, to talk about that application process, the planning that you had to put in to apply for the TLLP to see if you were accepted for that program, because I was part of reading those applications that came in and they were absolutely phenomenal, and having to, say to no to any of them was just so challenging. And so
I would
talk
not
a little bit about what you had to research to do to apply.
Oh my God, I would not have wanted that job. It was like really heavy duty, but completely reasonable, especially for like the sums of money. We're talking real money. Like these projects were heavily funded. So you had to come up with a project blurb, and then you had, and mine all had citations from the research. You had to have a team, even better if that team was across different schools, across grades. You couldn't be like, Michelle Cordy would like to do this project of one all by herself and then not tell anyone. You had to have, and this was the best part, it was all anchored in student learning. What will be the evidence of student learning? We love that. But also, hello, what will be your professional learning steps to get there? And so it was grounded in like, what are you going to see in your classroom? What are the kids going to be able to do? How are they going to be involved? But oh yeah, like teachers are learners too. So you had to come up with this whole plan and budget. Like it felt very grown up. Sometimes teachers, we don't feel very grown up. Like I look at my friends, like my brother, he works in the, for banks. And I'm like, oh, you're such a big boy. But we had a budget and that was cool. And then you had to have this plan for sharing. How are you going to take this nugget of learning, this little seed that sprouted into this little wee plant, and how are you going to take it and take it to scale and share with people? And then there was this fantastic meeting at the end. It was like a science fair for teachers, and we all got together to share poster boards of our stuff. But also there was the expectation that you went to conferences to learn and to share, and that we had blogs and all that good stuff. Did I flesh it out too much?
I don't know. No. Those are the details I wanted you to share, because it was, that process is one of a kind, and I don't know that it exists anymore. And yet I know UTFO, OTF are still trying so hard to support that professional collaboration, and what you did together in terms of planning it out for sustainable learning for both the teacher and the students. And so thank you, because I think that beginning process was very important to hear about, because that's what we're trying to support teachers to continue to do within their schools and in their classrooms together.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Right now we're kind of just holding on, like rocking back and forth with our thumbs in our mouths a little bit, but we'll get back there.
Yes.
I am anyways, but we'll get back there. And like I said, at the same time, there was this other knowledge mobilization thing that was happening. So I had again, right, I was the kitty cat that would trip and fall down and my nose would end up in the cream. I made these incredible contacts during my time as a master's student. And so then I was doing these CNAIR projects that collaborated with industry, higher education and schools. So I was the school-based person. We would pair with large organizations. And the one we paired with was in a university. And I was part of like the early group that teachers will either love me or loathe me for this, but I was part of the early group that evaluated the Desire to Learn platform and the early e-learning platform back in 2010, and gave like a lot of feedback on what that should look like. And that was the time.
Good for you.
Yeah, so cool. So I started like early on in my career. I thought I was legitimately not good. And I can say that now. Well, I can say it then. I knew I wasn't good. And got the support that I needed, did the BEd, did the MEd, found my fairy godmothers in the TLLP. So thank you forever for that. And then this really cool thing happened where what I thought I was doing was looking for the answer. I had all of a sudden like all this technology, I had all these iPads, and I had done these projects, and I wanted, they're 1-year projects, but of course there's the expectation, the hope and the dream that they continue. So after like I was rolling with this stuff, and a year is great, but I still didn't have the answers. And I thought, oh man, I just need to like keep looking for those people, keep scratching a personal itch. And I did this thing where I was like, I want to go to more conferences, but I don't have any money to do it. Okay, how am I going to do it? Well, I'm going to apply to conferences to present, because then you don't have to pay to go. And if I get accepted, maybe then my principal will help find some money to make that happen. And then maybe I can go and present. But I felt a bit like an imposter. Like I'm just going to share my little tiny bit. But really what I was doing was I just wanted to sneak inside the room where I thought all the really smart people were hanging out, because I just wanted to listen to them, because I felt I was having challenges, and there were never ending opportunities for learning, frustrated, uncertain, feeling like a perfectionist, not knowing like how to solve these problems. And I honestly thought it was like such a fable story, right? I honestly was like Dorothy. I just thought if I just gathered my friends and went to the wizard, I would get the answer and that would be fine. And so I went to these conferences, and I ended up connecting with Apple and doing a bunch of work with Apple, which was totally amazing. But by the time I got to Apple and became like an Apple Distinguished Educator, I was still seeking people and the answer. I still felt uncertain. I still didn't feel like I was enough. And I was presenting, but I was looking for the answer. And I got to the wizard, like I got to Apple, and they were like, so what are you doing with the iPads? They wanted to know, I was the expert. And it's just this story of like, if you've ever read The Alchemist or you've seen The Wizard of Oz, it's this like very predictable fable where you're like, the answer wasn't me all along. Like, trust yourself. And, I think that's something that all teachers, we need to, don't wait until you're sitting at the table with executives from Apple, because not everybody gets that opportunity. And I'm blessed beyond blessed that I got to do that. But like, I waited until I was sitting in boardrooms at Apple for them to be like, no, sweetheart, so I want everyone to know that they know. And then that begs the question of like, I was motivated. I'm going to wrap this up. The question is, what motivated you? And not knowing and feeling actually really deeply insecure and aiming towards perfectionism is what motivated me. And then when I realized I had the answer the whole time, I had to find something new to motivate me. But that is the good, the bad, and the ugly of why my hair was on fire. And kids don't like, I sometimes say, and I shouldn't. I'm going to stop. This is the last time I'm going to say this. Are you ready?
Yes.
I didn't go into teaching because I like hanging out with grownups. Yeah. As much as I try to connect with educators and I, the TLLP gave me that experience, research gave me that experience going to conferences, I actually feel most at ease and less awkward and more fun, like with kids. I feel most myself with kids, and I get to be some version of Miss Frizzle and Mary Poppins, and that's where I feel like, and making moments that feel good in my class is just, I need to write that down for bad days, but like making a moment with kids, it's a good thing.
Absolutely. You're reminding me of my sunshine calls that I used to speak about when I did the TLP keynotes, and same thing. And you know what? This is resonating with me so much, Michelle, because I've been teaching for 23 years and just adored my students, my classroom at Armitage Village Public School. And I had the opportunity to go work at ETFO. And I remember actually saying to my family, I'm itchy. I'm a little bit itchy for something more. And so it's so funny that you're talking about the itch. And I always thought full circle, I would leave ETFO because at the beginning it was a secondment, but then it became permanent. And I always thought full circle, I'd end my career back in that classroom. But then what happened was that I was bouncing out of bed at ETFO to go and work with teachers and educators as well. And so that's where I ended up retiring from. But
And
I
I
understand
had the, and
completely.
Well, and I had the good fortune, I have been in your session. So I have had the good fortune to see you bounce out of bed, doing a totally knockout keynote, a total knockout workshop. I have cried with you and I have laughed with you. And yeah, it was clear that you felt that way. So I was glad to be one of your students.
Tomorrow I'm going on a field trip with my daughter's grade 2 class. So I am managing that full circle.
Yeah, you really are.
And I think, Michelle, so many people that are with us this evening that are listening to you, and other teachers will be watching this on the OTF website, to hear that search at the beginning and your sincerity about the insecurity, because I honestly remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say, I think it was year 8, where I kind of sat up and thought, I think I've got it. Like, I think I've found my balance. And I think, that answer is happening now in my planning and my assessment and who I am. And I think for new teachers, middle of the career teachers, end of the career teachers, to realize that to give yourself that time to reflect and to find people to connect with and to continue learning with. So thank you so much for your honesty. Next question. How has your teaching practice been most influenced? And we know TLLP obviously was part of that, but I'm sure there's many other things that have as well.
I think, students, let's start with students. There's a few things. It's people, people are so inspiring, and kids are so inspiring, and kids that I did right by, and kids that, were hard to serve, or yeah, I think I had a student, maybe one of the most powerful things in my career is I had a student I won't say her name, in a grade 3 class, and all of a sudden she was diagnosed. This is like trigger warning. If cancer and talking about cancer is a difficult thing for you, like, take a pause, or seek the resource that you need. So I had a student who was diagnosed with brain cancer, and the diagnosis was really serious. And like a nurse came to talk to me and to the class, and she was going to go through treatment. She was going to go through all this stuff. And I was just like, this was still pretty early in my career. And I was like, oh my God, like this kid can't die on my watch. Like how do I shepherd I was like, how do I get the rest of the kids through this? Like, I don't know. And thank goodness that there was that support there. And what this student wanted, let's call her Kate. What Kate wanted was, like, throughout her treatment, she wanted to be connected to the classroom. And, if she was having a good day, she wanted to come to school for a period of time. And what a gut punch. Yeah. And then I really thought about it, and I was like, why does this kid want to come to school so badly? Is it because Miss Cordy teaches like such amazing lessons? Is it because Miss Cordy is like, no, like, why does she want to come? She wants to come because it's a safe environment. It's predictable. Her friends are there, and she just wanted to plug into a normal life, and she didn't want to be a patient. And I reflected so much on that, and I came up with 4 things from like my 4 key learnings from that were: number 1, school. Well, I'll just say the words and then I can do a quick dive. Meaning, belonging, hands-on competency, and elaboration. And in all that you do, try, and we don't hit it out of the park every day, but what this kid wanted, like, provide meaningful programming. So what, now what, right? Answer those questions as often as you can. So what, now what? So what, now what? So what, now what? All the time. Meaning, belonging, create a sense of belonging, like really, truly, that's what Kate wanted. Hands-on competency. How good does it feel, especially if you're a patient, to feel good at something, to feel like your brain has grown, to feel like you can put it together, physically put it together, pencil on paper. Like, we don't, like, especially in primary, it's such a big deal. And then elaboration. Where is the space for Kate to be Kate and to create that voice and that authenticity, in her relationships with her peers, with me, the school community, and through her work? Like, where's that opportunity? And I think I was really shook by that. And these moments can be like total bookmarks in your life, where professionally or personally, where you're like, whoa, I now have laser focus on what, like, my core values are as an educator. And it also prompted me to feel like, darn it, Cordy, show up, be present, do the work, which, that at that point, that wasn't a problem for me. Like, I could work, working too much was a problem, but show up and refuse to leave, because if this kid can make it between her treatments, like,
Yes.
get your
Puts things in perspective. Absolutely.
Totally. So hugely influential. And like, and how about this? How about this happy ending? Kate reaches out.
I didn't want to ask. I was afraid to ask.
No, I know. We gotta get through this for everybody.
Yeah.
So Kate reaches out to me during the pandemic. Hey, Miss Cordy, found you on Facebook. I'm crushing it. I'm in high school. I've got a job.
Oh my God.
Check my nails.
Oh.
I saw that message float into my my messenger on Facebook.
Yes.
Bawling. I was like,
Yes.
oh, great. How are you? So, and like, could I have done more to support that? Totally. But man, she gave us a huge gift in her bravery, and that was huge. Yeah.
That mutual learning and compassion. And I want to think about, you're talking about the connections you made for her and what you did for her and how she wanted to be there and how it was a wonderful, healthy distraction and escape for her to be there, to have some normalcy. But think about what you modeled to your other 20 children in that class, and the life skills that they had because of that year that they had, knowing that Kate was going through this, right? And what that you all pulled together and collaborated together. And I'm sure other teachers were probably involved in that as well in your school.
Oh, totally and completely. And the principal. And actually, I'll take that, love. But I also need to say that I was so afraid. Like, I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea, because I thought, like, when all these people came in, it was like, this girl does not have long to live. And I was like, is this a good idea? So the other lesson is, like, don't let fear drive the bus. Like, don't do it. And it's, and I talked about that, perfectionist, if you're a perfectionist, then shame is riding shotgun and fear is in the back seat. And I think we all feel afraid at sometimes, but if fear is allowed to be on for the ride, but you're like, fear, no, I'm driving.
Exactly.
And man, when you have, and if you're lucky enough to have people that are honest with you, like, I had a principal who was like, yeah, no, this needs to happen. And I was like, okay, so I can't take full credit for that, because I might have let fear drive had it not been for, like you said, the support of other people. So let people, listen to other people is the thing, and don't let fear drive.
And hopefully, I think everyone with us tonight, and anyone that will be watching the video when it's posted too, probably every educator in their first 2, 3 years has a story like that, where it's a student that they connected with, that they made that difference, which is what keeps driving you forward to bounce out of bed, get in there, and make those differences you can for each individual child, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you know, there are heroic stories like that, I think, for all of us. And then there's like just little stuff too. And we have to be on the lookout for both. Um, oh, and now I suppose that like now is the time that I would like to thank my sponsors. I think mentorship is super duper important. And I have had extraordinary good luck with the most outstanding mentors. I had the coolest supervisor for my master's who, like, in my B.Ed, I had a great B.Ed experience too, even though I was the lousy first year teacher. Um, uh,
A first year teacher who was growing.
oh no, I was legit lousy. Like,
Okay.
for sure. No, I got sat down by my administrator. It was like, it's not going well. And I was like, I know. And I got the support that I needed, and we turned it around. But I still had a great B.Ed program. And it was it was George Gadanides who like planted the seed. He's like, oh, you should maybe consider coming back and doing an MEd. And then he was supervising me, a master's student, but also this fantastic human being who was doing her doctorate, who is now the Dean of Education at Western. So how full circle is that?
Yeah.
Her name is Donna Kostopoulos. And if TLLP is my Cinderella moment, then she is like an intellectual, like Peter Pan, but like the opposite. Like, she wants you to grow up.
Yeah.
Instead of Neverland, it's like everywhere land. And man, the most brilliant human being. And we collaborated on such cool projects together. And I had great principals who were just so open to me being like, so what about trying this? Could I, like I said earlier, like going to conferences, getting accepted, and then being like, I don't know how we could all make this happen. But principals that were ready to like do some hacking themselves, and that were ready to be like, okay, I can find money for that. I can play outside the lines, but still inside the lines. And that was extraordinary.
And under probably those principals understanding that they knew what was in it for them and their school and the community and the students, right? So
Yeah. Oh, and the trust,
yes.
like, yeah. Oh yeah, they saw some payoff, and that they trusted me to like come through with whatever it was I was saying. And then once I entered into the world of educational technology via the TLLP door and the CNAR door, I then got hooked up with Apple, and the mentorship that I got inside of that program was just outstanding. Like, we would get together, like Apple would invite us to these week-long conferences in the summertime where they would bring the programmers and developers who worked on the apps to us to explain like the nitty-gritty of how things worked. And they wanted to know what we were doing. And then you were mixed up with this like crazy worldwide all-star like uber geeks, and we all would get together and collaborate. And then when we weren't there, like, rip Twitter. But back then Twitter was like super cool and a great place to get ideas, and social media was still social. So, by and large, you would engage in social media, and by and large, I felt like I was talking to actual people. This long string of humans that I was plugged into and were super influential.
Okay, I'm going to move us along to the next one.
Yes.
And you've already actually spoke to this question a little bit. So throughout your experiences in the classroom with your students and your school community, and as a teacher leader, what have been some challenges that you've encountered that have influenced your self-confidence, your motivation, and your continued professional learning?
I think for most of my career to date, I was really climbing up this mountain, and things just went from like, I I say I wasn't very good. I had some challenges in my first year, but I was well supported and I continued on to it. And I felt like I was just going up and up and up and up and up. And I think if you like, we're teachers, right? Like, how does it go? You go through elementary school and high school and like, you have this kind of like ladder feeling. And I guess I thought I was going to continue like that, and it didn't really. And what happened was, intentionally, I got to the height of this mountain. Like, so I was at this place where I felt really confident in my programming for, teaching a grade 3 program, which I'm back to now, even though it's totally different. Anyway, I was teaching this program that I loved. There's lots of technology integration. I was traveling a whole bunch, sharing with other teachers what I was doing. And it culminated in 2016. I keynoted this big conference called ISTE, and that was amazing. And then I decided I don't want to be the speaker anymore. I want that feeling of climbing the ladder again. I want to start totally at something new, and I want the experience of learning. And I was like, this will be so fun. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. It's like the itch spreads, right? Like you get itchy different times in your career, different spots where you think, how do I feed this now? And what do I have to change? And I think people realize too that it's okay to change your path where you are, to keep yourself excited and fueled and ignited.
Yeah. And I did that, and it worked pretty well. I decided to be a kindergarten teacher, largely inspired by my super awesome kindergarten teacher husband, Greg Marshall. And I went to that, and I enjoyed that. I was like, I had lots of itches again. Like I was like, oh, I have problems that I want to solve. This is really cool. But then, as other teachers I'm sure have experienced, I had students in my classroom that were really incredibly violent, and I didn't know what to do, and it was really tricky. And then COVID came, and enrollment for kindergarten all across Ontario diminished. And then I'm the girl that loves to be outside and like go on canoe trips and fish and stuff. And so I was like, guess what? You're going to be the outdoor ed teacher. And okay, so I was the kindergarten outdoor ed teacher, and I actually, funny that my keynote was called Show Up and Refuse to Leave, because what happened was I became the outdoor ed teacher, but because it was so crazy with COVID and like switching things around and being a perfectionist and trying to make it just amazing, I actually ended up injured and had to go on leave. So show up and refuse to leave, except when you cannot.
Right.
And so the challenges that I faced were, going back down the mountain, becoming a learner. And then I just had this like charmed career so far where I couldn't go wrong. Like everything always worked. And then I couldn't go right. Like everything, I was the opposite. And that was super, super tricky. And I think the thing that, and I'll say this too, I've always, like, teaching is tough. There are lots of challenges, there are lots of opportunities for growth. And they're just, if that becomes too much, like if the challenges come too fast and you don't have the skills to manage them physically or skill wise, then you have to reach out for help. But the thing is that once it's at that point, it's actually really hard to reach out for help. It's much easier to reach out for help when you're having fun and you're feeling confident. And so, I think that was super humbling to not be having fun and to reach out for help. And that was, I went from feeling empowered and fueled by a bit of frustration, a bit of uncertainty and perfectionism. And that didn't work anymore. And instead I had to shift to some other skills.
Very authentic. Thank you.
Painfully so.
I think many people will be able to relate to that. What would you share with and recommend to your fellow educators as you continue to grow and reflect on your professional successes and achievements with your students? How will you continue to make that difference that you spoke about this evening with your students?
I think that I think that staying in sync with the times is so important. I think you start your career, and when you start your career, it's like a young person listening to the radio. Like young people listening to the radio are listening to Top 40 and they're like, I love all these songs. These are all my songs. And they're like accidentally in sync with their times. They can't help but to be in sync with their times because the times are angled towards youth, musically at least.
Yeah.
And I think you start your career and you're freshly educated out of your B.Ed program. And, if you're as lucky as I was, your B.Ed program gave you contemporary skills for the time in which you live. But then you get older and you're like, I don't want to listen to Top 40. I want to listen to the classic rock station. And for music, that's fine. But for teaching, I think it's so important to stay in touch with the times in which you live. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how I have done this and what a difference it makes in my class. Number one, books. Now, nobody's going to argue that the books that you read to your class, if there are classics, we will always love the important book in primary.
Yeah.
We will always love, there's canons of children's literature that we're going to hang on to. But be on the lookout for modern stories because they just have a different vibe. An example of that is last year, I read this book by David Walliams called The Midnight Gang. So who's David Walliams? Well, he's the new Roald Dahl. So we still love Roald Dahl. We still love that, but this is more modern. And get this, The Midnight Gang is about, oh my gosh, this is such a gut punch. The Midnight Gang is about 5 kids who are stuck in a hospital because they're sick and they can't get out. And do you know what they do at midnight? The little gang gets together and they make their dreams come true. Mm. Hello, what a read aloud to do with kids post-COVID.
Almost reminds me a little bit of Where the Wild Things Are. Remember, out on the bed into the forest and
Yes. And I mean, that is a great children's trope. And this, you're absolutely right. It's totally like that. And then this had this flavor of sickness and being unwell and being locked down, but how you can make this little world. And if there's something that I love about teaching, it is creating a moment and creating a world inside my classroom. I was not a happy prep teacher, total respect to people that do a good job with it. Not for me. I want to create these moments. And so I think that a challenge for myself and the advice that I would give, the advice that I would give is try to, don't be alienated by the top 40. Try to pick up a children's book. And I have not always been super good at talking about my feelings, but boy, we talk about our feelings now. That's a modern 2022 thing. And so start reading more books about feelings and picture books and try to find the songs in the top 40 that you can get behind and stay contemporary in that way for the kids, but also for you.
Yes.
Right. Because having that moment, reading The Midnight Gang and just I see those, I call all my kids Cordys. If you've been a student of mine, you're a Cordy. I'll replace Joanne Cordy. I will rename students and I'll see them in the hall and I'll be hi, Mohammed Cordy. That's not my last name. Or it kind of is. And with that crew, I know will always have that. And then the other thing is be really clear on what your values are. For 2 reasons. One, that can always breathe energy into your program where you go back to your values. The story I told about Kate, meaning, belonging, hands-on competency, elaboration. Be clear on your values for 2 reasons. One, you can go back to them in a moment of this is hard. I'm not doing a good job. I'm not bouncing out of bed. We don't always bounce out of bed. Sunday night anxiety hits, what are your values? But also if you find yourself trying to stay in alignment with changing curriculum, you're in a staff meeting and your fabulous leadership is saying, oh, we used to do it like this, and now we're doing it like this. And you feel something bubbling up in you that's no, I don't want to move with that. like go back to what your values are, because I think those values can help you get unstuck. And also, when you feel that conflict between something you're supposed to do and you feel like I can't do it, sometimes noticing that the values of what you're being told to do are not necessarily your values, and then you do the work of like reconciling that and getting more information and working through it. Or you're like, parts of this I don't like, okay, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm publicly employed. Like I'm not actually in private practice, despite calling myself like at the classroom. I'm a public servant. Like, so know that maybe your values are out of sync, but if you want to go in private practice, like away you go. You're a union member, you are employed by the government, and like figure out. But I think naming what is hard and knowing why it's hard is so important for moving forward.
Good for you. Thank you. Last one for this evening. Looking ahead, how will you continue to find ways to be a teacher leader? And how do you see yourself continuing to support other teacher leaders?
Such a good question. And it actually makes me feel a teeny tiny bit small in a sense, but it's got a happy ending. The smallness that it makes me feel is like, I realize, you know, how much I used to really identify as teacher leader, and then how much, you know, I don't identify as that anymore. But, you know, there's small L leadership, like, you know, the little wins of telling somebody that their bulletin board is great. You know, somebody did that to me the other day and was like, your bulletin board is great. And then we had this like great professional dialogue, like looking for those little, like, it doesn't have to be even, you know, you don't have to be the one speaking at a staff meeting. You don't have to be the one, like, look for those little, like, I'm going to look for those little wins.
Yeah. Which I think, sorry to interject, but I think through COVID and virtual learning teaching, you know, we have to get back into those simple little conversations where we're giving colleagues that same positive feedback, constructive feedback that we're expected to give to students, right? And everybody missed out on that during COVID and the changes.
Sure. That's a great point. Beautifully said. And for me personally, I talked a little bit about how previously I've been driven by perfectionism and wanting for it to be perfect. And then that led to some like overworking and not so great life balancing things. And I've replaced that with three things. I've replaced that with compassion for myself, that I'm doing the best that I can with the tools that I have, and sidecar bonus, compassion for other people. Guess what? They're also doing the best that they can with the tools that they have. I want to just take away like the judgment of myself. I don't want to be judgy towards other people. I want to like celebrate those little wins and, you know, heal from the challenges we've had during COVID and come out, you know, better and better in this recovery period. So compassion is the big one, which is kind of code for like, stop judging yourself. No more like easy up on that. Pleasure. My parents used to say, if you miss the joy of it, you miss it all. And, you know, like, we work with children. It should be joyful, right? Like if there's any profession that should be oriented towards joy, shouldn't it be ours? You know, like, and right. So like, it should be fun. You get one childhood. Here it is. Let's like find joy, meaning, belonging, hands-on competency, elaboration can all like, that's like the 401 to joy. We can do joy. You know, there can be hard work, but let's like, you know, I work with a great partner who's like, you know, always a grade 3 team partner who's like, you know, she wants to go and do like a winter fun day and she wants to do like grade 3 and 4 math rotations. And I'm like, yes, I'm here for that. And I think the other thing, which I think we've all practiced way more during these quiet times and COVID recovery, is gratitude for good work. Man, like like this teaching gig, it can be tough, but isn't it such good work? Mm-hmm. How many people have the support of a strong union, you know, Ontario Teachers Federation, represent how many people get to be, it's yucky right now, I get it, but how many people get to be like world builders with kids every day?
Absolutely.
And yeah, they can be super like button pressers, but whoa, there's some good stuff there. So I think, compassion, find pleasure, be grateful, and those little wins. There are heroic stories that happen in your career, like the Kate story that was just forever changing. But showing up and doing the work day in, day out, there's so many little successes. And I think that truly the consistency and sticking with it and doing the work is where you get kids coming back to you, like that stop you, like when you're like, you dashed out in like your joggers to the grocery store because you didn't think you'd see anyone. And then you see a kid who's like, oh, Miss Cordy, remember me? And you're like, absolutely. And those, when you see these kids and they're like, I remember you, you were my favorite teacher. And you were like, wow, you were a hard to serve kid.
You're bringing that excitement back that I remember now, because I remember a student once I had in grade 1 seeing me in the mall, and the mom had to come and find me afterwards in the mall to say, he's so worried that because you're here in the mall today, that you won't be at school on Monday. And it was the whole, the teacher, Miss Nelson, was it, that lived in their classroom, slept under her desk, that perception was there. And I just remember thinking, the pedestal doesn't get any higher when a student is so worried about whether or not you were going to be back at school on Monday because they saw you outside of the classroom.
And that's cute and hilarious, but what an incredible responsibility that is, right?
Absolutely.
To like, these kids call us mom accidentally, right?
Yes,
like, mom, I mean, Miss Cordy, and you're like, wow, don't like when things are tough and the challenges or whatever, remember like that's like what a huge privilege and a huge honor that is to do that.
what a beautiful closing. Well, I'm going to say I'm now Joanne Cordy.
You are, I love it.
And Michelle, I want to thank you on behalf of all the members that are with us tonight and who will be watching this, like for your time and your honesty and the messaging, and for sharing the journey that you've been on. I know that when this is put on the OTF website, I'm going to be watching it and listening to it again so that I can hear some of the things, because you've just been so inspiring and so authentic tonight. And I hope you constantly, find those little wins that you need to have and to celebrate right to the end of your career, because personally, I can say I have no regrets, and that's a really good feeling in terms of the difference you've made. And you think about that little girl who searched you on Facebook, and I'm sure she's not the only one, because we all get that a little bit, and boy, that's the feedback that goes on for the rest of your life after you've been an educator. So thank you so much. And I'm going to open it up to anyone who has questions. And it was wonderful to connect with you and to be in conversation with you tonight with the OTF webinar. Thank you so much, Michelle.
This is sign and Cordy talk for me too, me.
Okay.
Me. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.